What are you looking at? Huh? Hello, everybody, and welcome to Catholic Truth Family, where we talk about love, relationships, dating, engagement, marriage, and children. This is our new little one. Her name is Gabriella Maria. We've been posting these on YouTube, and a lot of people, sometimes we get up to like 1,000 views and likes and comments, crazy amount of people who love you, Gabriella. She was born with Down syndrome. And we're going to have a whole show on her in the future and Down syndrome. But I wanted to introduce everybody to our little one and her little full head of hair that she came out with and her bow. Say hi, Gabriella. And today, we're going to be discussing disappointments. If you're married or if you're even intending to be married and having kids, you're going to have disappointments in your marriage. And this one won't be, perhaps maybe not like the last one. Last one, I was like tearing up and it was a heartbreaker. Even Julie said she cried watching that last one. But but Julie here is a mother of 4 and now 5. She has a little boy who's the same age as Gabriella here.
That's right.
And he's a little cutie as well. And so, yeah, we were due one day apart from each other, ironically.
Crazy.
And she's now the mother of 5. She has a wonderful husband and they play adoration together for her kids. She's a homeschooling mom and she's just a wonderful wealth of advice and knowledge. And she even teaches me. So I'm happy to have her back on the show. And if you love this show, go back and check out all of her other shows she's done too. They're all super helpful and I love them all. So welcome to the show, Julie. Thanks for coming back.
Thanks, Bryan. And this is the first time I've seen Gabriella, like almost in person over Zoom. And she is just perfect. She's beautiful.
So, Julie, you're the mother of 5 and you had a son and everything seemed to be going well. And then you had a daughter and she is someone who had special needs. And that's not what you were wanting. It's not what you were expecting. And to be honest, Gabriella is a beautiful little girl of ours. And we didn't want a Down syndrome baby. We weren't really expecting it, until they started seeing signs. And it's not something that we wanted, but it's what God wanted for us. And, you have a special needs daughter too. And I know it was very difficult for you. It presented a lot of challenges for you. And I think people need to understand this because we think that going into marriage is just going to be, we fall in love, we kiss, we hug, we have babies and we have picnics and everything's hunky dory. But sometimes there's so many challenges of life, even if it's not kids, maybe it's a husband or a spouse getting sick. And we have to be ready and prepared for these challenges of life so we can accept them and use them to grow in holiness. I was meditating the other day on Jesus, who said that if you do not pick up your cross daily and follow me, you cannot be my disciple. And if you're not his disciple, there's no salvation for you. So God gives us these or allows these crosses in our life so that we can follow him. And he brings us great joy through them. And I know for you, it was a process, a very, very difficult, challenging process from from the challenge to the joy and to the beauty and to what you have today. So maybe you can begin at the beginning and talk us through that.
Yeah. Felicity, she's 8 years old and she is a complete blessing. We didn't know necessarily right away that there was anything wrong. And I almost don't like using that word wrong because there's nothing wrong with her. She's special. She's got unique gifts that God's given her.
She's different.
She's different. And from this point, we actually have no diagnosis of how or why. So we only we don't know why. So genetic testing didn't show us anything. We just know the symptoms. So Felicity's symptoms are low muscle tone. I think she gets tired really, really quick. So her legs get tired, her arms get tired, and she slumps over. So she's doing therapeutic horseback riding right now to help, strengthen her core. And it's just been amazing. She also has lazy eyes. So we do behavioral optometry. We work with strengthening her eye muscles. And she also has speech delay. That's her biggest one she's hypernasal, meaning all the airflow is escaping out her nose. And so what we had to do when she was about 6 was we had to go for surgery. We went with a craniofacial team and she had a surgery, a pharyngeal flap put into her throat or I forget exactly where it is, but yeah, it's in the back of the throat.
Gosh.
And it helps to stop the airflow. And it was just crazy. hearing her. She didn't talk perfectly. It wasn't like it was done and all of a sudden she could talk. But we heard sounds we'd never heard her do before, like da. She could never make an F sound, a D sound, a P sound, an F, like nothing like that. So when we heard da, it was like, oh, it was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now how old was she when you started seeing problems in her? Like, I know, was it right away, or were you like, oh, we got a beautiful little baby, and then like, uh-oh.
Yeah, it kind of was. So I remember she being like, she's a dream baby. She would like, I'd be folding laundry and she'd kind of fall asleep on the floor next to me and be like, oh, she's so easy. Our
The
firstborn was
unicorn
colicky
baby.
and hard. Yeah, she was just so easy. So it wasn't until about 2 that we noticed that maybe she can't hear very well. And that's another one of her symptoms. She has really a lot of fluid buildup all the time. So we do tubes. She has to get sets of tubes. Once they fall out, we have to get the next set in. So she's had 4 sets.
Wow.
So it's kind of crazy. All of a sudden I was like, can she hear? And so I'm like snapping, and I'm like clapping near her and there's no reaction. So that was like, so we brought her to a hearing place. We got her first set of tubes in. She did birth to 3. She was just, her cognitive delay was making things a little tricky. So she's kind of just been that's been part of her life. And I actually thank God that we found out early on, because she doesn't know any different. So we go to speech weekly, we go to OT weekly, we go to behavioral optometry weekly, we do horseback riding weekly, we do
Oh my gosh.
all of it weekly. And so she doesn't know any different, and
God bless you.
doesn't complain about it. So that's just such a blessing for us.
That's the blessing, but it's difficult with all those extra appointments, as if you didn't have enough to do with 5 kids running around, going crazy, getting your attention all the time. You have to go to appointment to appointment to appointment to appointment just for her, not to mention the sports and the other things for all the other kids. I was like, yeah, that's difficult, because with Down syndrome, and now we just had to go to audiology yesterday, and she has a little bit of permanent hearing loss apparently too, in her left ear. Her right ear is fine. Her left ear just has minimal, but with the fluid buildup, it becomes minimal to moderate. So we're going to have to probably get a hearing aid or something like that in there. So yeah, it's all these appointments that you just, where do you get the time, So, all right. So you find out that she has hearing issues, and you're like, oh my gosh, she can't hear. And then what happened from there? What was the next cue?
Yeah. So then it was her speech. So I remember, Felicity's favorite food is noodles. I mean, 100% she would eat noodles for every meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So I remember she would say things like noodle, and it would all be like very throaty. And she would ask to go outside. So she'd be like, oh, hi, and everything was very, very throaty. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, that's different, because we have our Peter who was talking at early. So I was like, that doesn't sound quite the same. And so then we started going to speech, and we were using the public school system at the time. Our son was in Catholic school, but they don't have those services. So we were at the public school with Felicity, and the speech therapist had no idea what to do with Felicity, because nothing was helping. I mean, we were doing this for a year, and at certain points, she was plugging her nose to force the air out the mouth. And it kind of worked sometimes. And then a family member was the one that was like, hey, you should check out craniofacial, see if they can help you. And I'm like, I don't even know what that word is you just said. All of this was brand new. And so it was a learning curve for me and Mike, because we didn't know anything. Speech therapist. I had a friend who was a speech therapist, so I kind of knew what it was. No clue what OT was, no clue what PT was. I was like, what is happening? So it was slowly friends and family kind of guiding us to the places we needed to be. So the craniofacial team was actually our number one helper. They did the scope down Felicity's throat to see what wasn't working, and then from there we did the pharyngeal flap for her.
And what age was this that you really noticed that she had some speech impediments?
3.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was age 3. And then it wasn't until she was 6 that we did the surgery, because they couldn't. It was like, you have to wait until they're a certain age to really be able to figure out what's going on in the throat. So we had a long wait.
When you started noticing these issues, I mean, how did you take this? Was it easy? Was it difficult? Was it just a challenge? What was your thought process, your feelings and emotions going through these things?
That's such a good question. I remember the appointments weren't really hard. It was kind of like, this is just what you do. My child needs something, I go do it. And so God gave me that grace to just be like, this is what we do. It got overwhelming, didn't make it easy, but it was like, this is what I have to do. The part that was hardest for Mike and I, and tears after tears after tears, was she would try to tell us a story. And she's so imaginative. Bryan knows this. She is like the most imaginative child. She will come up with these crazy stories about like unicorns and monsters and fairies and I'm dinosaurs. I mean, she'll go crazy. So she's telling us this story at the age of like 3 or 4. And we understand 10% of what she's saying. And so I thought, well, let's learn sign language. I am so into this. Let's do it. So I'm learning it. My older son's learning it, but Felicity's low muscle tone makes it almost impossible.
Oh, man.
Even just moving your fingers, even say like just simple things like going outside, she would be like, mm-hmm. And it like, she couldn't, there was no hand movements that would work. She could do a few things, like anytime we had anything like simple like that, or if it was thank you, something like that. But it got to be pointless because she wasn't learning sign. So 1, we couldn't understand her, and 2, I'm doing sign to her, but she can understand me. So it was kind of, it was about 2 years of learning sign language that went nowhere.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it was rough.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And then, go ahead.
I was going to say, but it was worth it. You know, you try everything with your child and you try to figure out what works for them and what doesn't work for them. And I feel like as a parent, you go through that roller coaster and we kept praying. Our prayer was always, God, provide the people that will help us know what to do for her. And he did. And it sometimes would be years after that prayer got started. So we had to be patient and wait and just trust God's timing on it. Because sometimes I was like, I would go crazy. I'm like, but why is she like this? We still don't know. And so I'm still waiting. And I'm like, but God's timing. He knows for some reason. You know, it's so frustrating. So you just have to trust that God has a perfect timing. That
they can't even say why she has a low muscle tone, right?
No idea.
That's unbelievable to me.
Yeah.
Wow. That is frustrating. But I like what you're doing, Julie. It's like, you know, you have a great attitude. You know, you're like, this is what she needs. You know, this is what we need to do. And I feel like so many people get caught up in themselves, you know, like, why is this happening to me? Why is God doing this to me? Why? I just wanted a normal child. I just wanted something, you know, like everybody else. And why does this happen? And they just get focused on themselves. And it's like, you're doing the right thing by saying, you know what, this is what she needs. Cause that's love. You know, love gets outside of yourself and thinks of the other person before yourself. And so I think that's a good lesson in life, that life is going to throw a lot of things at us and we need to, you know, weather them and be open to them. And sometimes God teaches us a ton of lessons to us if we are open to these lessons, if we're open to learning them, if we're not complaining and griping the whole time. And I know Kathy and I, you know, had some struggles, more so her. She's probably more connected to the baby through pregnancy, you know, but she struggled, she cried, she mourned, you know, the loss of, you know, having a normal baby, you know, having a best friend for our first one. And that's where like her whole life, she just envisioned, because her and her sister, she has one sister and they're best friends. And her whole life, that's what she wanted. And when she found out she was having a girl, the sky was the limit. They were going to be best friends too. And then once she found out that it could easily be Down syndrome, is like, and she won't be able to talk the same way. She won't be able to relate the same way, or at least these are the things you hear at first. And then, so she just cried for months and months and struggled with this and grappled with this. And, you know, it's difficult. And now she's at the point where she just has fallen in so much in love with our baby. She's like, I just feel so bad that I cried. She's like, I can't believe I cried over this little beautiful thing that I wouldn't want anything different. You know, like I feel bad that I actually did that. This girl is so beautiful.
She's perfect. Yeah. Yeah. That's okay though. And I feel like we need to go through that. We need to go through that time.
You do.
And even what you were saying, that that focus on self, you know, Bryan, that you brought up such a good point, that a lot of times we do focus on self. And I will be fully honest, I absolutely go through those moments where I'm like, I don't want to go to another appointment. I don't want to get in the car and drag these kids. But it is what it is. And I think it was Father Mike Schmitz had a priest be like, this is what it is. Like, you have to accept it as it is. And sometimes it doesn't make it easier, but it does make you change your thought process. I have no choice. I have to do this. And so then it's like, okay, God, help me through it, versus fighting God the whole time. Like, why did you make this happen? Why did you make this happen? And during Lent, I've been kind of reflecting on, this idea of carrying the cross, whatever God gives you. And one thing that I was listening to Colleen a little, your previous speaker. If you haven't heard her talk, it's just beautiful with Bryan. It's just beautiful. But she mentions like her cross, and I'm thinking in my head, well, like she has a real struggle. This is really hard. And then it was this moment of your cross is real. And a lot of times we compare our crosses. We'll say, well, it's not as bad as, so I can't complain. And that is wrong. That is so false, because yes, it could be worse. Absolutely. It could be so much worse, but that's not what God gave you. God gave you this cross. And I think about what we go through with our 4 boys and with Felicity. I'm like, those are my crosses. And it's the cross, though, that leads us to Christ. It's that cross that will change us. And Felicity has 100% changed me. She's made me more patient, because she is that child that will like go see a flower and wander off towards the flower as we're like getting in the car to go somewhere. And I'm like, Felicity, like Mama Bear comes out. I'm like, okay, calm down. Okay, Felicity, let's grab your flower. Let's go. Like, got to bring it down. So she helps me with patience every single day, because she's definitely with her focus issues and everything. It can be hard. It can be a challenge, but
yeah. And it is a challenge. And I told you before the show that some of your previous shows have helped me, because I've been struggling now with 2 kids. And I was like, I can't complain about 2 kids. Julie has 5 kids, and she's like is a whiz and a pro and an expert. And I'm like barely managing 2. I'm like, I got a long way to go and a lot to learn.
No, but that's the whole thing too, is it's your cross though. You are such a good dad and you're learning. And I remember having 2 and being like, this is way overwhelming. And it does get easier with each kid. I will say that. I will tell all you out there, it gets easier the more kids you have.
Somehow
it's weird.
That math shouldn't add up, but it does.
It's weird. I don't get it.
Everybody
but I will
says
testify
that.
to it. Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, so I've been really reflecting on that cross, that idea of like accepting your cross as it is, but also allowing others around you to help. And I think that's really hard for a lot of people. I have a dear friend of mine who just has a really hard time letting people help her. So I've been reflecting on that. Even Jesus carrying his cross, he didn't give his cross away, but he allowed Simon of Cyrene to help him carry his cross. And how beautiful of a community that God has given us, whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's our church, allowing other people to help you in that cross. And I can rattle off so many people have helped us with appointments with Felicity, with like my parents coming out to Boston during her surgery to help with the other babies. And my in-laws helping out with appointments all the time. My brother, he will just pick up and come over and help me out whenever I need. And it's that Simon of Cyrene that we need to be for people. Because I know Bryan, like having a baby with Down syndrome and having a toddler is overwhelming. It's so overwhelming. So
and not just a toddler, but a dragon baby, high needs toddler, which is like having 3 of them. It's like insanity. She's in this stage where she's just, we should just have a whole show on this, the terrible 3s, terrible 2s, 3s, and 4s. But everything is a meltdown. She screams at the top of her lungs, falls on the floor. Then she gets up and she starts kicking anything that's in her way. So like doors, she'll start smashing stuff, and then she gets hurt, and then she cries, and then she gets up and starts kicking on the floor again. She's like, dragon babies, like high spirited. I still haven't done a show on this. I keep saying I'm going to, but they have higher intensity and higher emotions than most kids by nature. And so when that spills out, it's insane. And she could scream at the top of her lungs for 10, 15 minutes, and she might not calm down unless you can figure out a way to do that. It's like crazy. So to try to deal with that while the other one's melting down and getting her food, because the other one is totally chill. All these Down syndrome babies are supposed to be chill because of the low muscle tone. No. Ours cries and screams and rages too, and she won't stop until she gets what she wants. And she like rages. She has 4 cries, and once the cry where she can't even breathe anymore, I'm like, how do you get to here? And both of them are melting down, and me being like, I'm kind of an intense, high needs parent. So, I'm already more intense. So I'm like, that's what I've been trying to work on: more peace, more patience, less anger, less impatience. I've been trying to work on that through Lent. I'm just trying to like cast it out. I want to have it done by Lent, the end of Lent. And they're both helping me purify me of that and purge me and make me a better person, make me a lot more patient, a lot more kind, more understanding, more empathetic. I tend to be a man, like, Kathy cried through her pregnancy, like, oh, I wish I had this. I'm a man. I'm like, well, you don't. It's nothing we can do. why cry over it? It's like, I tend to just like, exactly. There's nothing you can do. And even the other day at audiology, Kathy was a little sad, understandably, and it's not a bad thing to be sad. But I'm like, oh, well, there's nothing you can do. Like, let's just do what we can for her, and like, just be practical. And so that's how I tend to think. But I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos on from Dad University online, and because he had a major temper and like just destroyed his kids, and so he had to go to courses and get fixed, and he did, and now he shares everything he learned. And I've been learning from that, just how to deal with toddlers, how do you deal with their tantrums, how do you deal with their meltdowns, how do you prevent them in the first place. And so I've been really trying to go to town on all of that during this Lenten period, so I can better myself, so I can better my kids, I can be a better role model and that sort of thing. But, one thing it's taught me is to be more empathetic. It's better at that. Girls they feel more, they're more in touch with those feelings. And so when, Sophia melts down, or if she's having a hard time, I'm like, I'll just walk out of the room and be like, you know what, deal with it. Call me when you're done, but now I'm like, all right, what are you going through? Why are you feeling this way? What is making you sad and angry? And I try to feel her emotions, and it's helping a lot, actually. And so these kids, as difficult as they expand us, they grow us, they make us better. Yes. And it is the way to heaven. We become more virtuous and holy.
Oh, I completely agree. And I know those moments so well, Bryan, where I always say I'm either going to crack and go crazy and like laugh,
yes,
or I'm going to like melt and cry. Because you're like, when you're overloaded and overwhelmed by what your kids are going through, of course you're going to react to it. But the beauty is, as adults, we can control somewhat of our reaction out. So one of the big things of mine is like, oh, the sigh, like, oh, and controlling that, because the kids see it and they're like, oh no, I'm a burden to mommy. And you never want them to feel that way. And so those moments you're like, okay, I have control. So I more often than not just laugh, because I'm like, if I don't break one way, I will go crazy. So like, I will just start laughing. I've had those moments where I'm like, I can't believe this is happening to me right now. Like, this kid's doing this kid's doing this. I have crazy stories. And like, I just have to laugh, because you're like, well, okay, God, you win. Like,
we should do a whole show on crazy stories.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
But no, I understand exactly what you're talking about. Like, because like I said, I've been reading the book, How to Parent Your Spirited Child. That's what they're called, highly spirited children. And they're crazy. But they said if you're mad at and frustrated and put over the edge by your, spirited child, well, take this test, because there's a good chance you're a spirited parent, which is why they're that. Mm-hmm. And so I took the test, and both Kathy and I are spirited parents, which means tend to be more emotional, more intense, more of that sort of thing. And so I'm already intense, so when their intensity spills over, I'm already like up there, I'm not the chill, like, oh, you know what, it's okay. I'm not, but I'm becoming that, thankfully. But I'm not that. Like, even the other day, I was like, Sophia screams back here at the most obnoxious volume you could hear. Sometimes I record it just because people would not believe it. And for the length of time she can scream and just not stop is insanity. And so the other night I was like, oh, enough. And so I got up and I started storming down there like Papa Bear. And I grew up with an angry dad who just put his fist down or put his fist into you. And you just stop, and that's it. It's like, that's no more. And so that's kind of what I've learned. And that's what I'm overcoming. Mm-hmm. And so lately, I just get up and I storm down there and I remember everything I learned. And I just say, take that deep breath and put my hand on my chest, say, calm down. Just because they're intense doesn't mean you have to be. Yes. And I learned, and Kathy's like, good job. I'm like, thank you. Yeah. And I go down there, and I've been actually for quite a while now, I've had a pretty good track record of most of the time being calm. And even though I throw a temper tantrum in the living room and I might just rage out there, I tell Kathy, I'm just doing it out there to get it out so I don't take it out on her. I don't want to, teach her a bad lesson. So I was like, this isn't ideal, but it's a step in the right direction for me. It's like, please be empathetic. And, but even so, I've been trying to become even better with that. And it's been growing better, and I'm very happy with it, because I don't like that. And there's parts, people say, I'm blabbing on, but I
No,
just
this is
have all these
good.
thoughts vomiting from me. And I saw this meme by Mr. Rogers. And it says, people look down on Down syndrome kids or kids with autism as different, special needs kids. And they look down on them and they say, oh, some of them, like half our country says, oh, they shouldn't even live. Let's abort them. But if you look at what Mr. Rogers says, he's like, half our country isn't normal. These kids are not normal in a different way. But how many alcoholics are there who are considered normal but have a drinking problem, a drug problem? How many people can't interact, can't dance, can't socialize without smoking a joint or without, having a drink? How many people have anxiety problems that cripple them? How many people have other issues like intimacy issues where they can't even be with their spouse? I mean, these are normal people by all standards. They look normal, they act normal, but there are things in all of us that we all are broken, and we have this brokenness that needs to be addressed that makes us not the way we should be. We're not full people, fully alive. And these children help us to become more fully alive if we accept it. That can make us literally crazy. And there are parents out there who yell and scream and beat their kids and yell at their kids because they're so frustrated. But the real problem's with themselves. They don't like that their kids are yelling and screaming and throwing temper tantrums, but they're doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And so that was one thing that convicted me. I'm telling her not to do it, and yet I'm doing it. So what? You know what? I need to change. And when I change, I can teach her how to change as well. And that's what I'm trying to do, is model that behavior that I want her to do.
Yeah, it's when you see them doing something that you do, and you're like, oh no,
Yes.
I gotta work on that. Because you're like, oh, that's my tone. That's how I react. I don't want them doing it, but what a great lesson that you see it. Thank God that we see it, and thank God that we notice that we are causing a few more problems. But I think about too with Felicity that there's times when, like you said, kids are different. People see them as different. We're all different. We're all unique and crazy. But with Felicity, a lot of times my biggest struggle is how others perceive her. So, and she looks, if you were just to see a picture of her, you wouldn't notice that there were issues. But then you see her, we were just yesterday at the Capitol building in Hartford doing a tour and then going to the March for Life. And so that during the tour, she's the kid like lying on the ground, like making angels into the carpet, like, Felicity, you got to stand up. She can't handle shoes. So she's constantly taking her shoes off and it makes her really uncomfortable. But I'm like, Felicity, we're in the Capitol building. You have to keep your shoes on. And she's the kid that's like, they have these chairs that just snap up and they make really loud noises. So she's snapping. I'm like, you have to stop. And so it becomes a real struggle because then people are like, what is she doing? Like, what is that? What's wrong with her? And other kids have a hard time relating to her because she wants to growl and make animal noises. That's how she wants to play with you. So you're like, oh, my kid's so unique. But then you find those few kids who are gold and they just, for some reason, God gives them the grace to love her as she is.
Yeah.
And I feel like my biggest issue as a parent is accepting her as she is. Sometimes I do want to be like,
that's so hard.
Just be normal. Put your shoes on. Stop laying on the ground. like, do you see all the other kids? They're sitting nice and quiet, and letting go of that is really hard as a parent, is just to say, and yes, there's a point where you have to teach your child and it's a constant battle, but it's how you do it. And instead of me being like, you have to get your shoes on, it's, hey, Felicity, let's get your shoes on. Good job. It's the way we act. And I'm not always perfect by any means. I often lose my temper. Bryan, I'm sure I'm a high-spirited person too. So I lose my temper and I have to, okay, that didn't go great. I'm going to try better next time. And not getting so in despair as a parent, especially as you're carrying that cross, whatever your cross is, if it's small, big, it doesn't matter. It's your cross. Accept your cross and ask God for that grace to help you, especially if you have a difficult child, to see them as he sees them, because we all have a difficult child in some way. We all do. So it's loving them as they are and helping train them to be as best as they can. And that's going to look how God wants it to look. I would love to be able to put bows in my daughter's hair. I would love to be able to put a pretty dress on her, but everything makes her uncomfortable. She will rip out any hair tie. She will like fight me on her shoes. She wears Crocs or goes barefoot every day. It's like, okay.
She sounds like a highly spirited person, who has a very high sensitivity to things.
Oh, very high sensitivity. But then pain, she has a high pain tolerance. It makes no sense. She got stung by a bee as a little kid and she was like, ow. And the bee is like in her hand. And I was like, I don't think that's a normal reaction.
Wow. What I love about you, Julie, is that you know your weaknesses and your shortcomings, and you really work on them. You really go to town on them. You make yourself a better person. And just how much you've grown over the years is just amazing. And it's just wonderful to see. And as I said before the show, you teach me things. I reflect on things that you say in past shows and they help me. It's like just when I don't want to hang out with my kids, when I don't want to do things, when I'm frustrated, when they're bugging me, I have to pick up my cross and I have to do it because that's what Jesus did. He picked up his cross, not just the cross, but every day of his life, he picked up the cross of his annoying disciples, of the Pharisees who badgered him constantly and prevented him from sharing the gospel when that's all he wanted to do. And he had to deal with these morons. And it's like, he just kept so many frustrations and he did what he needed to do. And you've taught me that. And so I've been trying to just do what I need to do. I don't feel like playing with them. Well, it's not about what you feel. Just do it. Well, I don't feel like, being imaginary. I definitely don't want to color. Can we do anything? No, Daddy, I want to color. All right. It's not about you. It's about them. So I've been trying to be more selfless and, it's easy to become selfish in this culture, but you've helped me a lot to do that. So, it's been helpful for sure.
Thanks, Bryan. And right back at you. You and Kathy are amazing parents. And especially now, I feel like you guys picking up your cross the way you have and you're beautiful, Gabriella, like just the way you've loved her and embraced her and said yes to all God. Like, you don't know what the future holds, but you don't care. You are taking that cross and embracing it as Christ embraced his cross. And I think that's oftentimes all we can do. We don't know what the future holds. I have no idea. I sometimes allow the fear of the future to kind of like get in of like, will Felicity ever get married? Will Felicity ever be able to talk normally? Will she ever be able to wear clothing normally? Like, all these things. And it's like, God's like, don't worry about it. That's the future. Stop. Just embrace her as she is and help her in this moment. And I think you and Kathy are a great example of that.
And we've been trying to learn that too, because Gabriella probably won't be a lot of those things. But, we've been listening to a lot of podcasts and just be like, you know what? They don't need to be what everyone else is. They just need to be the best version of themselves. And you need to work with them where they're at and help them to become who God made them to be, not who God made other people to be. And so we've been, struggling with that too, because, we share the same issues and fears as you do. And I don't know if you've been following my Facebook post, but you should definitely go back and read the one from 2 days ago. Is National Down Syndrome Awareness Day. And I shared my fears, and my worries about people are going to see her differently. People are going to treat her differently just because of the way she looks, because of the way she talks. And this is a lesson for me. See, God gave her to me because I do that too. And I'm worried about what she's going to look like. And I only want to present her best foot forward. I'm like, but if I do that, then that's not really her. I need to present and love her as a person. I need to learn this lesson, and maybe I judge other people that way. Maybe we judge this whole culture by looks and by what people look like and what they act like and what they walk like and how they talk and what they say and what they don't say and what it's not like us. And we judge. You know what? My daughter might have an extra chromosome, I said, which other people don't have, but she has a lot less of things that other people do have. She doesn't have, and she won't have the hatred, the bigotry, the judgmentalism, the impatience, the bitterness, the unmercy, and all of that stuff. She's going to teach us what it truly means to love. I was at a mall the other day and I saw a girl with Down syndrome. She was 8, but she looked 12. She was so big on a merry-go-round. She was like a little baby. I'm like, why is she on there? And I waved to her. And when she came around, I have literally never seen a more pure, loving look in my entire life. Singular, most pure I've probably ever seen. It looked like Jesus was looking directly through her into me. And I was like, just the stuff that she's going to teach me. And I've said since day one of having a Down syndrome baby, I just look forward to learning the lessons that God is going to teach me through this and hopefully through me to the world.
Oh, that is exactly what they will do. And there's no way not to. They're purity and they're so joyful and they're going to be their unique selves regardless of what we do. God has instilled in these children, their identity is so rooted in Christ that it doesn't matter what the world says or sees about them. So I know she's not really affected by other people's looks when she's, she'll do these sensory things where she'll start shooting and she'll go and she will repeat it for 10 minutes straight. And it's a sensory thing. She's stimming, she's doing whatever she's doing. And people's looks don't affect her. She does not care. She's like, this is who I am, and
Yeah.
it's taken me time. Like she'll come out in her like dragon t-shirt, my Dragon Ate Your Homework t-shirt, with some leopard print pants and her rain boots. And she looks like a hot mess. And her hair is like, she looks like a wild child. Like we always
What
say,
mother let her leave the house with that?
That is exactly, Bryan. That is exactly how I would have seen that. That is exactly. And so when you saying and pointing out, like, the way we see things, they're changing us, because I would have been that mom, like, ooh, who let that child out like that? And it's like, well, that's me now.
I know.
Brushing her hair hurts her, and I brush her hair and then it goes right back to snarls. And I'm like, well, this is crazy. And putting bows in her hair is impossible. I can't put her hair in a ponytail. Like, she's Felicity.
It's the same thing with dragon babies with Sophia. They say dragon babies will wear, or now dragon toddlers will wear coats in the winter, in the summertime, and they'll want to wear shorts in the wintertime, or winter boots in the summer. And it's like, you could fight it every day and have, 1 hour meltdowns over why they can't wear a coat outside in the summer. Or you can just let them do it and learn from the experience and realize that they're hot and, take it off easy. But for a few times, the parents are going to be like, why would they allow that? But it's just, we judge and we don't know all the surrounding circumstances.
Yeah. And we can only do what we can do. God will give us the grace as we go, and we will fail. There's no doubt about it. But that's where God will pick up the slack, because he's God and we're not. And that's a hard lesson, that we are not God and we cannot be perfect parents, but God is the perfect parent and he is the perfect God. So we will mess up and we pray for the grace.
And let me just say, Julie, that, your daughter is beautiful. Like, like when I see her, yes, she looks different. She talks different. She acts different. She has this imagination, everything is different about her by looks. But she just comes up to you and she wants to be picked up, and I sit her on my lap and I feel like I'm holding a baby in an 8-year-old body. She's just like the most innocent, sweet, pure, loving, perfect little child, and it's like, it just reminds me of what Jesus says. Jesus says that the kingdom of heaven is made up of children such as these. And I've been thinking about that with Gabriella too, that she's not going to be bitter, angry, judgmental, all this stuff. And I was like, this is what the kingdom of heaven is made up of. Your daughter and my daughter are the model examples of what heaven is going to be like. There is going to be none of that other stuff in heaven. So we need to learn it now, Jesus says, if we ever have a hope to go to heaven. And for me, I've been trying to meditate on that through Lent. Your daughter's beautiful, and it's, she would be a great model to meditate on.
Yeah. She's so spiritually connected too, which is so fun, because she'll hear these stories of the saints. We listen to them all the time. And so we're listening to glory stories or whatever it is. And there's stories of like saints talking to animals. And she's like, I want to talk to the animals, in her little Felicity way of saying that. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. You absolutely can talk to animals. Like if God gave you that grace and that gift, you can do it, girl. So she'll go out and talk to the birds, and she'll be like, Mommy, the birds told me they love Jesus too. And I'm like, awesome.
Aww.
It's just, it's allowing them to be who they are, and it's allowing them, sometimes again, you have to help them and guide them, but she's awesome. She's great.
Last question. Is I did not expect to go this long. Sorry. But as challenging as it's been, has she brought you, like, do you find it joy? Does she find it, she brings you joy and, love, and teaches you a lot through this?
Yes. I would say it's a hard one, because it's a really, she's tough in a lot of ways. Teaching her, homeschooling her has been really tricky. It's been painful at times, just the slow progression, but there's progression. So I'm happy about that. So the joy comes in, it comes in every facet. It comes in every way. There's joy when she realizes something and learns something. And she's a joy with her brothers, how she reacts to them. But there's so much pain, because she can't quite relate to other kids her age. So right now it's almost like a painful joy as I'm loving her and learning her and letting her be herself. There's so much joy in that, but there's so much pain, and I'm trying to help her as she's 8. She's getting older, and helping her to relate, so that the joy is painful, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because you just want the best for her, and you can't give her that. Like, it's a process, and you just want her to have what she needs. And it's tough for you as a mother. It hurts you because you just want what's good for her.
Yes, it hurts me as a mother. That's exactly right.
I can sum that up to perfection. because Kathy goes through that too, and she bleeds.
Kathy and I get each other.
Yeah. Oh, no, totally. And you guys need to hang out again.
Yes.
But thank you for coming on and sharing your struggles, your joys, your little beauty. I definitely want to have you back for more shows on kids so we could do a whole bunch of them on, interesting things kids do. But but thank you for coming on today. We really appreciate having you.
Thanks, Bryan. This has been great as always. Thank you.
And thank you all for tuning into Catholic Truth Family. Make sure to check out Julie's other podcasts, download them, listen to them on other days if you need a little parent inspiration, or if you're looking forward to being a parent and you want to know exactly what it takes to be a parent. We talk about the joys and the difficulties, all of it here at Catholic Truth. Thanks for watching.